Dad, as a show of appreciation for all your years of service, we want to gift you something that perfectly captures the essence of who you are. A car that embodies your spirit in every way, powerful, timeless, and built to last. Just like you, it has a reputation for excellence, and it will always remind us of your strength, your drive, and your unwavering commitment to everything you've done, both in business and in life.
My name's Carroll Shelby, and performance is my business. This GT350 is a racing version of Ford's Mustang 2+2. We set the cars up for racing by installing special components, racing shocks, and so on. It was designed and built by Ford engineers as kind of a laboratory on wheels to test new ideas.
When you think about my dad, this is the first car that came to mind. He loves Ford Motor Company. He's old, and he likes to go fast. Now look, please join me in welcoming a special guest that we brought in today. He's an original member of the Carroll Shelby's team. He was part of the team that helped build the first competition Model Shelby GT350 Mustang, and subsequently all 35 of the famous units that followed. He came here to speak with us today all the way from California. Let's give him a great round of applause, Mr. Jim Marietta.
Thank you. Can I grab one of these here? Well, I've listened to what everybody's had to say about Tim, and to be quite frankly, I'm very honored to be here. Sounds like quite a guy, and it's an honor to be in a room and associated with such a nice guy that's built not only a company but also a family and sounds like a great group of people. And based on the people that I've met in the last couple hours, I'm honored to be a part of this. So a little bit about what I did is I quit high school when I was 17 for various and sundry reasons, and ended up moving to California and working for Carroll. on the Mustangs. I was 17 at the time. And the reason I got the job is because I worked in garages and gas stations at the time where you could actually work on cars. And would travel to the races, and I bugged the team until they gave me a job. That's how I got there. And because I was a low man on the totem pole, so to speak, I ended up working on the Mustangs, and not the Cobras and the GT40s, although I did do a little work on those, but not as much as I did on the GT350s. And so it's been quite an experience for me. When we started these cars, there was no. You saw that part about what Carol had to say about what we're doing, but when it came right down to it, it was the guys in the shop who built the car, and the people that really need the recognition, over there at Shelby's, and today, as a matter of fact, are people like Peter Brock, Ted Sutton, Peter Bryant, who worked in the shop, and when they wanted something done, they just said, "Put the big radiator in the car." Well, there are no plans, there are no blueprints, there are no ideas. It was, here it is, just get the job done. So when the car was pushed out of the shop and went to Green Valley, Texas, on February 14th, Valentine's Day in 1965, Ken Miles won the race in that car, and he and Bob Bondurant were at the race. Bob was driving one of the Cobras, and they found a little hump on the front straight and figured out a way to get all four wheels of the cars off the ground. Okay, they did that as a stunt, and it became known as the Flying Mustang. When it came back, most people didn't know this, but the plexiglass window was pop riveted to the top of the door. And so it came into the shop, and Ken Miles comes over and says, "You need to take this bloody glass off this door. It's too hot in there, and I can't talk to the scrutineers." So I took it off and threw it away, which now, of course, 60 years later, I wish I had kept it because it'd be worth a lot of money. But it went to the trash. And they brought in the aluminum door frames, which is what in the car that sits here in front of you. And they just said, "Here are the door frames, put those in the car." And so I said, "Well, do you have any ideas?" And they said, "Well, as I recall, you worked at a dealership at one time, didn't you?" "Yeah." "You'll be able to figure it out." And so that's how things went at the shop at Carol's shop in Venice. And so it was an exciting place to work, and there were a lot of exciting things going on. We kind of worked with legends every day: Dan Gurney, Ken Miles, Bob Bondurant, Alan Grant. And it was just an exciting time. And so 10 years ago, which would have been the 50th anniversary, I thought I enjoyed the camaraderie and the excitement of building from scratch, really. And so I asked some of the guys whether or not we should get together and redo it. And so I called Peter Brock and Ted Sutton. Peter Bryant, unfortunately, had already passed away. Jerry Schwartz, who kind of came in a little bit later, and Chuck Cantwell, who was the project leader. And so Chuck and Jerry said, well, they both lived in East, and thought, well, they weren't interested in flying to the West Coast to work on it. So Peter Brock and myself and Ted Sutton went about taking on the idea of recreating another line of 36 cars They only built 36 of the originals, and so we're only going to build 36 of these. But this car is a little bit different in that this is the car that we wanted to build some 60 years ago, and for various reasons, it didn't get done. And so the front fascia on this car is redesigned by Peter Brock. And so the premise of building this was that I wanted to do it as close to the original as possible. And Peter, and to a degree Ted, would say, well, you know, we wanted to do this and wanted to do that. And I said, well, you know, I'd like it to be a little bit more original. And they said, if we can show you that we had blueprints or some indication of what we're going to do, you know, what do you think, Jim? Could we do that? And I said, okay. So sure enough, Peter brought out old drawings that indicated that they were going to redesign the front fascia, but never got around to it. So this front fascia is more aerodynamic and cools the front brakes better, and also handles the cooling of the engine better, because the original cars, especially the race cars, because they didn't have a fan, they were either overheating or they were racing. That was the two conditions of those cars. In addition, this car has the independent rear suspension. Ford came out and wanted to put independent rear suspension in the 1965 Mustang back in 1965, and was designed by a gentleman by the name of Klaus Arnig, who had come over from Germany and became the head of Ford Advanced Vehicles, and designed independent rear suspension based on the Dana 44 centerpiece. And I helped test that with Ken Miles almost on a weekly basis, until Ford pulled the plug on it because they found out it was going to cost them an additional $14.85 per car to put it in. And, of course, back in the day, I think you could buy a brand new Mustang for $2,400. And so they nixed that project. And so when we were doing ours, and it's a very long story, so I won't get into it, but we found some of the original, I found 3 original units that escaped the crusher. And so we put that in our cars and designed it almost identical to the way it was. And so this car has the independent rear suspension. It has the rear brake ducts that work. The original car brake ducts were pop riveted to the bottom, and they got tore off when they got on the track after a few laps. And also, this car does not have the what we call the package tray with the spare tire on it, because Ted Sutton in Peter Brock's garage in Henderson, Nevada, some 10 years ago, when Peter and I said, well, we need to have brake ducts so that we could cool the rear brakes. Ted started out like we did 50, 60 years ago now, and drew the brake ducts on the concrete floor with chalk. And that was the blueprint from which he worked. And then used construction paper to design it, and then finally did it in aluminum. And so it's such a beautiful job that we didn't want to cover it up with a package tray. So you can see all the work that goes into these cars. The rear fenders were flared. I flared these rear fenders myself because I did the very first one some 60 years ago. And if you look at it, they're not perfect. And the reason they're not perfect, we can make them perfect. I'm sure there are body shop guys here that could make all this perfect. But we left it this way because we wanted it to indicate that it was a specially hand-built car. And that also goes for the plenum that's on the engine and the splash guard in the trunk, is produced with O3 aluminum, hand cut, and acetylene welded, which is an art form nowadays, by one of the original guys that worked at Shelby's by the name of Jerry Kirkpatrick, who was the mechanic and the driver for the Dragon Snake back in the day. So this car has a lot of pieces and history from the original guys. Ted Sutton, Peter Brock, Jerry Kirkpatrick, myself, Jerry Schwartz kind of worked with us on from afar. And so there's a number of guys that are doing resto mods and Mustang recreations, but we're the only guys who were there. There was only 5 or 6 guys that touched the original cars. And so Peter and myself and Ted do the work on the cars. So this car is the real deal. There are other people building Mustangs, and God bless them, but we're the only ones that were there 60 years ago in Carroll's shop. We're the guys who tested it at Willow Springs on a weekly basis to get it to win the races, and then we tested it at Willow and Riverside with the independent rear suspension. And so it's a car that once we all move on and take the checkered flag, there'll not be any more Mustangs, or for that matter, Cobras or anything, that have been touched and worked on by the original guys from some 60 years ago. And one of the reasons in my mind that that's exciting is because in 1965, the Shelby race team, won 6 championships. And that's not 6 championships over 5 years. That's 6 championships in 1965. First of all, we beat Ferrari. Carroll, I understand, I'm trying to be as not as politically correct as possible. Carroll said that that we beat Ferrari, and we did. He used a different term to describe that. But anyhow, we won the FIA Manufacturers Championship. We won A production with a Cobra, B production with the Mustang like this, the United States Road Racing Championship with Ken Miles, the NHRA A Sport Racers Championship, and the AHRA Championship, all in 1 year. 6 championships in 1 year. In disparate racing, sports car racing, endurance racing, and drag racing. And so, and this year now we're also celebrating the 60th anniversary of the GT350. So that's the background of the original Venice crew, of this particular car, and I know some of the pictures have been I don't know where the screen is, but at any rate, some of the cars that we had, some of the original pictures from our shop in Venice. And so it's a really special year. It's a special group of people, and it's unfortunately the group of people shrinks a little bit every year. And I feel honored to have been a part of it. And we build our cars and test our cars at Willow Springs, just like we did 60 years ago. And one of our test drivers is John Morton, who was one of the original drivers for Carroll, and ended up racing at Sebring, but Ken ran into the only tree on the track, so that kind of cut that short a little bit. And Rick Titus, who was the son of Jerry Titus, who won the championship in the Mustangs for Shelby in 65, 6, and 7. So we've come complete circle with these cars, and I try and involve as many of the original guys as possible. And so that's kind of the background of what we're doing and the background of this car and our organization, Original Venice Crew. So just lately, if you could indulge me for just a moment, I started a foundation called the Original Venice Crew Foundation to honor guys like Ted Sutton and Jerry Schwartz and Jim O'Leary, who helped build the Shelby legacy, but nobody knows their name. And so the foundation is to help recognize people, not only at the Shelby race team, but at the Holman and Moody group, Penske's, the guys who stay awake all night long and keep the cars running. The drivers get the accolades and the champagne, and the ladies sometimes, but the guys in the back get a pat on the back and say, hey, great job, but nobody knows their name. So I think that they need to be recognized, because these guys are artisans and craftsmen and do a great job to keep these cars going for 500 miles and for 24 hours. The second prong of the foundation is to get young guys to get involved in the automotive industry as designers and mechanics, fabricators. First of all, because from my personal point of view, it's very rewarding to work on a car and see it go out on a track and win a race, and see your ideas come to life and be used and be recognized. And also that the industry also needs some new minds, and you don't have to go to college. Although I did end up going back and finish high school and college and law school and a whole bunch of things. But you don't have to do that to be a great mechanic and to have a great mind and be a great designer. And so we want to promote that for the competition teams, as well as the dealerships and others in the automotive industry. So I put that together, and so it's a 501c3 that we're going to use to honor these guys. And so that I guess I could tell one quick story, others if you want me to. But so I helped Dave Friedman, who was the photographer for Shelby, full-time photographer, do his last book. And we came across some photographs of the car with a reverse hood scoop, although this one's in the front. But the hood scoop was reversed and facing the window. So I said, geez, I do remember that. So I called Peter Brock, and I said, Peter, you did a reverse hood scoop. How come we didn't end up doing that on all the cars? Because the reverse hood scoop later became known as cowl induction. When you go down the back straight, you pick up some speed because the wind hits the windshield and curls back in and gives a boost to the engine through the carburetor. And he said, well, Jim, he said, here's what I was told. He said, I took the idea to Ford, and so Tim, since you worked at Ford, you may get a kick out of this. He says, I took it to the guys. Of course, this is before you were there, but he says, I took it to the guys at Ford, and I presume it must have been a marketing guy. He said, if we put this hood scoop on backwards, we're going to get higher speed down the back straight and a little bit more horsepower. And picks up probably about 85 miles an hour or so, because we just recently tested it ourselves. And so the guy from Ford said, Peter, the car is already painted like a skunk. And if we put the hood scoop on backwards, we're never going to be able to sell these cars. Everybody knows the air goes through the front of the car. So those are the kind of stories that would come up from working with at the shop and the different ideas that we had. So, there's some others, but at any rate, so I wanted to go give you an idea of the background of the car, what the original Venice crew comprises, and what an honor it was to work there, and what an honor it is to be here today to celebrate Tim's retirement. I guess I had to use that word, but I couldn't think of a better one. And so he can spend time in Florida and have a good time with this car. It has a comp seat in it, so it's a little hard to get in and out of, but you can swap that out a little bit later if you like. Anyhow, so that's my presentation. I brought with me, I think somebody's going to bring out some special garments for you here. We have I think they'll get it here in a minute. But so that you'll have a jacket similar to this. We make these jackets from the ground up out in California, and so this is one of our team jackets that we used. The original was sent with the team that went over to Europe, where we took on the Europeans, were the truly only world champions when it comes to various kind of sports, if you will. But anyhow, so this is what the guys wore in '64. It was designed by Peter Brock. We make these now from the ground up. We buy the material. We have it quilted in L.A. and it's cut and sewn in Long Beach. And then this is an identical shirt that we wore at the track. You've seen renditions of this in the movie Ford versus Ferrari. And so it's identical, all the little details. It has the elastic here and the comfort collar. It's just like the one that you see in the advertisements with Carol. And the interesting part is the way that Cobra is on the back, is that this is what they call loop stitch, which means every letter on this shirt is put on one letter at a time in a loop stitch fashion. So it's a handmade shirt and a handmade jacket, and to a degree, a handmade car. So we hope that you So we hope that you enjoy all this, and I think it's quite a tribute to you in what you built. It's our cars, and what Shelby did is kind of a legacy deal, in that it lasted for 5 magical years, 62 to 67, came back a little bit later, but not in the same fashion. But what you built is more of a long-lasting, more of an empire, in a true sense of doing great things and putting a great team together. And so I'm honored to be a part of your presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Great job. Thank you, Jim. Well said. So in summary, Dad, we love you. We're proud of you. And I don't know how to end this without making you feel any more awkward than you already are. So let me just say it like this. Enjoy every moment of the ride, because if anyone deserves it, it's you. As I stand here today reflecting on everything you've accomplished, it's hard to find the right words to truly capture what you've meant to all of us. You've not only shaped a career that we all admire, but you've also shaped our lives in ways we'll never fully be able to express. You've shown us what it means to work hard, to follow your passion, and to never give up on something you love, even when the road gets tough. Congratulations on your retirement, and here's to many more years of cruising in style. Thank you.